I think human consciousness was a tragic misstep in evolution. We became too self-aware. Nature created an aspect of nature separate from itself. We are creatures that should not exist by natural law.
Well, that sounds god-fucking awful, Rush.
We are things that labor under the illusion of having a self. This accretion of sensory experience and feeling. Programmed with total assurance that we are each somebody. When in fact, everybody's nobody.
From the very conception of the medium through the late 1980s, television played a particular role in the lives of Americans. Early television primarily consisted of formulaic episodes that told a repetitive and concrete story. The blueprint of television could be wrapped up in a simple A-plot, B-plot narrative that would neatly conclude by the end of an episode. For this reason, an immense distinction was drawn between the world of film and the world of television. While the world of film included masterpieces such as The Graduate, The Godfather, and Taxi Driver, mainstream television consisted of programs such as The Brady Bunch, MASH, and MacGyver. Though many individuals still hold sentimental love for the television programs of old, critiques of the pre-90s medium were bitterly disparaging. Movies were distinct from television for possessing a particular artistic capacity. Film critic Jordan Hoffman stated in a 2017 interview that in the 1990s, there was nothing on television. It was a desert. I didn't watch television. It was the lamest thing you could do. This all changed when a certain program hit the small screen on April 8th, 1990. Visionary filmmaker David Lynch had the idea of taking the medium of television and using it in the same way gritty filmmaking told stories. Collaborating with practiced screenwriter Mark Frost, Twin Peaks was born. What made Twin Peaks stand out as a unique form of the medium is its pioneering of the long-form television model, while keeping the art house nature of David Lynch's films. This unique fusion of genres laid the groundwork for the next 30 years of television. The executive producer of Ray Donovan, David Hollander, stated, "You can't watch television right now without seeing the imprint of Twin Peaks." This cultural phenomenon led to what Jeffrey Fowler of the Wall Street Journal described as a television renaissance. The 3 decades following the premiere of Twin Peaks pioneered a form of television that would go on to rival the likes of film. In 2013, Salman Rushdie stated that unlike mainstream movie writing, American television is not dumbed down to entertain mass audiences, but written with a kind of control over the plot and characterization previously enjoyed only by novelists. Many shows cited by Rushdie include Mad Men, Breaking Bad, and The Wire. These programs have introduced more complicated or philosophical themes into the mainstream canon of television. This has been dubbed literary television by Emily Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer claims that long-form television possesses similar qualities to classical literature. With this age of a television renaissance on the rise, a young writer named Nick Pizzolatto had the idea to take the format of a philosophical novel and adapt it to television by creating True Detective. After publishing his first novel, a disappointed Pizzolatto undertook the task of creating a television show that took a deep look into the human condition. While initially wanting to express pure philosophical ideas to the audience, he realized that an engaging plot must come first before anyone was going to take the time to review his work. To understand Pizzolatto's vision, one must first understand the philosophical worldview that he was trying to convey. Many authors, such as Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, and even the ancient philosopher Plato, have used what has been called the philosophical mouthpiece. This may be defined as the character whose primary purpose is to portray the philosophical ideas of the author. Pizzolatto created the character of Rusk Holm, a nihilistic detective, to be the primary explicator of his own ideas. Pizzolatto states that Cole is based on a part of himself, or rather the part of himself that he does not like to examine. One of the first influences seen on Rust Cohle is the philosophical school of antinatalist nihilism. Cohle initially believes that consciousness is a tragic misstep in human evolution, and this idea can be traced back to the modern horror writer Thomas Ligotti in his work The Conspiracy Against the Human Race. Ligotti compiled the works of Friedrich Nietzsche and Arthur Schopenhauer into a philosophical work of contemporary pessimism. The central theme of this work is the idea that human consciousness is an evolutionary mistake. Ligotti brings this idea into the modern age by asserting that religion is a linguistic glitch of human intelligence. We are beings that long for meaning in a meaningless world. Cohle possesses the metaphysical outlook of a nihilist, meaning that humans live in a material universe void of objective morality and meaning. The show concludes with the solving of the mystery, and we as an audience can see the progression of Cohle's character. From a man who was once an avid preacher of the meaningless of life, we find that Cohle's antinatalist attitude has changed to a hopeful one. After waking up from a coma, our protagonist tells his partner, Marty Hart, of the love he could feel for his late daughter even in the dark regions of unconsciousness. Existentialist thinkers, such as John Paul Sartre, posited that in a meaningless world, one must find meaning in life. Though Pizzolatto believes that the universe is void of objective meaning, the conclusion that Rust Cohle reaches during the finale indicates that Pizzolatto agrees that meaning can be found in the world subjectively. The story of True Detective is similar to something you may have heard of before. Two detectives find the ritualistic murder of a young girl, orchestrated by an occultist serial killer, and seek to find the perpetrator by penetrating the occult itself. The two must speak with individuals all over southern Louisiana to attempt to solve the mystery of the murders. This narrative not only draws upon the nihilistic philosophical ideas, but the show brings them into a context by placing them in the real world. There is a fan-favorite scene where the two detectives visit a traveling evangelical church to interrogate the parishioners. As they wait for the service to conclude, they observe the churchgoers from the perspective of an outsider. One of the primary influences on this scene is the parable of the madman, written by Nietzsche in his work, The Gay Science. His most famous supposition, God is dead, finds its origin in this work. Many aspects of pop culture misinterpret the meaning behind this text. It is often asserted that this work is meant to be in opposition to God, that God's death is somehow a good thing. The work's meaning is quite the opposite. What Nietzsche intended to portray, according to Walter Kaufmann, within a world that has deconstructed the metaphysics of God, there's no purpose in life. All things could be explained through an idea of a God. But if humans were to live in the age without the idea of God, mankind will need to find an alternative path to sanity, morality, and order. The scene that takes place in the church is almost an on-screen commentary on Nietzsche's work. By watching the service, the audience observes immense hopelessness from the churchgoers. They seem to be reaching out to something that's not there. One can see these ideas expressed through the story itself, but what perhaps hits most of all is the hopeless setting of bucolic Louisiana that seems to convey the world of Pizzolatto. In an interview with Dan Harmon, Pizzolatto talks about his personal development and how it helped craft the intensely nihilistic worldview of True Detective. As a child, Pizzolatto grew up in the rural South, near New Orleans. He often spent time with very old-time Christian religious individuals. This informed him of the great hopelessness of the South. In the poverty of Louisiana, people turned to Christianity to cope with the melancholic life that they lived. Pizzolatto tells Harmon that during the location scouting for season 1, they came across some places in the South where reality was too on the nose for TV. One example of this was a strip mall that painted a picture that was too obtuse for the small screen. On one side of the road was a sign for a ballet studio for kids, depicting the silhouette of a young ballerina girl. Directly on the other side of the street was a sign for a strip club that had the silhouette of a pole dancer that almost directly mirrored the silhouette of the young ballerina. It was as if the town itself was telling young girls themselves that there is no option but to exploit their bodies to make money. This idea of a town's collective unconsciousness is explored through Cole's idea of the psychosphere. This is a rather obscure term that was coined in the earliest 20th century by weird fiction authors such as H.P. Lovecraft. The psychosphere can be defined as the collective energy and hive mind in a particular area of the world. Cole states that he can sense something off in the psychosphere of rural Louisiana. What he can sense is an underlying presence that has been pulling the strings of the rural South, a rich occultist family known as the Tuttles. The audience soon discovers that the Tuttles are the ones who control the police, school, and politicians in this part of the world. In a nihilistic world such as this, individuals in a state of power have no laws or objective morality to prevent them from committing the most heinous of crimes. Using old-time religion and superstition, the Tuttles can keep the general population blind. The sexual degeneracy permeates the poverty of the bucolic South. The viewer can infer a causal relationship between the activities of the cult and the absence of principles from the show's setting. The argument of the psychosphere puts much of the show's murders into context. The degradation of morality does not exist solely in a world of the immoral, but it permeates the collective mind and taste of a society. These murders are less of a plot tool of the narrative, but a product of the setting. Though in the end, they are only able to catch one of the occultists, they can come to terms that love is real and it can make life worth living in the dark world of the TV show. While watching some of the terrifying locations of the show, the old cliche, "a picture paints 1,000 words," comes to mind. Television offers a unique and powerful medium through which ideas can be conveyed. Will Self, in 2014, writes an opinion piece for The Guardian that the novel is dead. Self defines the novel as the sort of writing seen in classical literature involving difficult themes more potent than bubblegum fiction. The supposition is made that the modern mediums of entertainment are a majority thoughtless consumerism. The classical novel will drift into obscurity and be read only by a select few of the intellectual elite. Self states that this is because the hallmark of our contemporary culture is an active resistance to difficulty in all its aesthetic manifestation. Self seems to preclude the idea that the very medium of this art is subject to change. Pizzolatto was inspired to create a philosophical TV show similar to David Lynch's creation of Twin Peaks. While Lynch brought the concept of art house cinema to the small screen, Pizzolatto took the blueprint of the philosophical novel and adapted it to the medium of long-form detective mystery. Not only is it evident that Pizzolatto's chosen medium is an effective one for the exploration of philosophy, but the very difficulty of themes that Self claims is void from modern culture is present within the story of True Detective. Long-form television is anything but easy to consume, for it takes dedication and patience to understand the message of the show. The philosophical novel may be hard to come by on the page, but it has not left the world. The echoes of what was once seen in the writings of Nietzsche, Dostoevsky, and Camus have found a new home on the popular medium of television. While this new age of thought is simply in its infancy, academia is beginning to validate the medium. Someday, in the not-so-distant future, we will come to find that the days of great thinkers will find a comfortable home as writers for the small screen. This legitimacy through academia has been given the name literary television. An example of this is the academic usage of HBO's The Wire to examine complex issues. There is a rising trend of well-respected universities using The Wire to teach sociological and literary subjects. Many teachers of sociology and anthropology believe that The Wire is one of the greatest portrayals of poverty, class, bureaucracy, and the social ramifications of economic change within the confines of Baltimore's inner city. Professors who use it as a medium to teach various social science courses state that putting a story and a face to these complicated issues helps humanize the complex problems and engage the students. If The Wire can be used by college professors to teach complex sociological subjects, then perhaps Pizzolatto believed that True Detective can be used as a medium to introduce the ideas of existentialism to those willing to learn. The show concludes by Marty and Cole killing the serial killer and finally ending the spree of killings that had taken place for years. Cole ends up in the hospital near the point of death, but survives to find that the Tuttle family has been able to evade the law once more. As the two sit outside the hospital in the dead of night, Cole begins his final dialogue, signifying the completion of his philosophical arc. Television was once known for cheesy dialogue, superficial emotions, and formulaic plot. The modern age of TV has introduced a range of shows that are the very definition of the term thought-provoking. Nick Pizzolatto was the first of many who will bring philosophy to the masses. True Detective has allowed the torch of the philosophical novel to live on, and though the flame is dim right now, the spark has been lit for the contemporary age of thought-provoking television. To echo the hopeful mantra of Russ Cole, you ask me, the light is winning.